Welcome to Obsidian. Let's make a handlebar template from a JSON file. Okay, g'day guys, and welcome back to another Obsidian video. Tonight we're going to be touching on a rather advanced topic. If you're new to Obsidian, I would suggest this is not the video for you. If you've come here looking though to use the JSON and CSV Importer plugin by Filing, which is an absolute fantastic addition to Obsidian, then you are in the right place. Specifically tonight we're going to be looking at how to use a JSON file. So I've previously done a video on the CSV files, which are a lot simpler. JSON is another format of data that you'll see commonly used in applications across the internet. And the benefit of it is there's quite a few sort of TTRPG applications out there or apps out there that use JSON as their data format. So therefore it's useful for us to be able to go to those places, get their data and use their data to bring into Obsidian. So that's going to be walking through today. Now, as I said, this is an advanced topic, guys. They're going to be dealing with some code. It's going to be something that not everyone is going to understand how to do immediately, but hopefully we'll step it through in a way that you'll understand, or at least walk away having an understanding of how you can get some benefit out of these JSON files, or at least maybe even just a better understanding of how to read them. So without further ado, let's jump in. The plugin we are using tonight is the JSON CSV Importer. All right, it's by Filing 42. So if you don't have that installed, please do go through, do the install, do the enable, and while you're there, guys, have a look at the README. Okay, there is a full README here. It's got a lot of the functionality that I'm going to talk through tonight, plus a lot more. I'm not going to go through it all. All right, I haven't used it all myself. Some of it's far more complex than I need, like regex, for example. I don't need it. Yet. I haven't had a use for it yet. I'm sure it'll come. But there's stuff in here that can be quite good for obviously learning how to use this stuff. So anyway, let's jump in. Now, specifically tonight, I'm going to be looking at how to import some spells. Okay, we're going to grab an example and we're going to work on that example. And your data might be different, right? Your situation will therefore be different. The thing about JSON is that while it is a structured data format, the type of data you're using and the way that data is structured is ultimately going to define how you need to write your handlebar template. For anyone who's new to handlebar templates, handlebar is a method or a system for like bringing in data, right? It defines a template that can be used to bring in the data. It's another external piece of code that's generated. The filing is used here in order to enable the CSV and JSON importing. So where you hear us going handlebar templates, we're talking about the JSON and CSV importer plugin, because you're making a template, a handlebar template that gets fed into the JSON CSV tool or plugin alongside the data that you're using, and the handlebar template tells the plugin how it wants to make the JSON or the CSV data look. All right, so that's what the handlebar template is. So we're going to be going through and building one of those. So let's just jump in and have a quick look. I am going to be working from 5e Tools. If anyone doesn't know about that, it is probably one of the biggest sources of data for 5th edition. Please do make sure that you are only working with content that you own, all right? But it's a fantastic resource if you want the data. And where I'm specifically getting this is I'm going here to utilities, I think it is, and if we go from memory, Homebrew Manager, all right, we get a button here to browse the source repository. All right, so browse source repository takes us to GitHub. And from GitHub, we can have a look here at the Gitty limit. All right, we can come in and have a look at the repositories owned by the Gitty limit. There's many, many different copies of this, guys, but this is the one I'm using tonight. And if we go in and have a look at what are we going to be looking for? The standard, till I go over it, Homebrew. Homebrew is cool because it is the Homebrew stuff. Oh, the Gitty limit.github.io. That's the first one, the standard. All right, I would be downloading this whole zip file here. All right, but specifically once it's downloaded, inside there you're going to have a data folder. You're going to have a whole heap of different JSON files, guys, like a lot. There's books, there's bestiaries, there's spell books, but I'm going to be using the spells. and we're going to be going in and having a look at the spells.php. Should be here somewhere. It's probably right in front of my eyes. We got fluff. There it is. Spells-php.json. All right. As you can tell, spells is the type of data that this file contains. PHP stands for Player Handbook, so there's all these different books in here, and JSON is the data format. All right. There's also the Homebrew one. That's got other books for third parties and things like that, so that can be quite a useful resource as well. But anyway, you want to download that. You're going to go ahead and get the file. And ultimately, if we jump back into Obsidian, what we're going to be looking for is the JSON file. All right. Now, I've got this one here open in my text editor. All right, and you can see this is a pretty big document. Like, you know, we're at what, 28,000 lines or something. Like, it's quite a few lines here. And when you come in here, this can be very overwhelming, guys. But let's just slow down and have a look at what it is that we're looking at. So we've got some curly brackets that sort of start off the data and set the structure. All right, so it's telling us that this is spell data. But what we're looking for here, and we can tell by the name, is the name of the spell. Okay, and see this curly bracket here? That's kind of telling us that this section here belongs to the acid splash spell. Now, I'm using a program called Notepad++ here. It's a free application, and the thing I like about it is you can set your languages. All right, so we're doing JSON here. So what I can actually do, you can see I've got it set, is I can come into J and set JSON, and then it just color coordinates all my text in here to make it easier to read this kind of code. All right, so we can do that. We can come in here. We'll follow that line down to there, and that is acid splash. Okay, now if you understand your spells and you know them, you'll be able to see, like, this is a cantrip. It's a level 0. You can see the school. You can see the number of actions required. Like, this contains all the information that we need or that we may want to get into Obsidian so that we can have a note about this spell. And that's ultimately our objective here, is we want to take this file here. We want to make one note per thing. All right, so one note in this case per spell. So we're going to make a acid splash spell, an aid spell, and we're going to make all of these as we go through. But the question is, how do we do that? Like, how do we learn Handlebar? And for that, we're going to jump in. I'm actually just going to copy this section here, one spell, all right, from the start of the curly bracket to the end of the curly bracket. And we're going to come in here to this handlebarsjs.com. This is a fantastic website to learn how to use handlebars with JavaScript, with JS, sorry. All right, so we're going to go to this live demo button, or sorry, JSON. All right, and you can see what we have here is this fantastic sort of like live demo environment that we can use to sort of test around and learn how this stuff works. This box down the bottom here, this is the data. This section here is for helpers. For the most part, you should probably ignore that for now. Like, there are helpers, and you're going to hear the term helper in other parts of this video and in other parts of your journey into JSON. But for now, it's probably better that you understand that while it is something that you can create yourself, that, you know, don't mess around with that just yet. This is the template, all right? And this is the output. So if we have a look here, we have a piece of JSON code that says first name value is Yahunda, the last name value is Cats. We have a template that says first name, loud, last name, all right? The loud is the helper, all right? We can see loud is the helper here, and what that's doing is capitalizing the entire word. So first name, Yahunda, all right, it's pulling directly from there. So this is the data, this is the template, this is the output. Then here, this is the data, this is the template, which we're making loud with the loud helper, and this is the output. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to you, but just to show you how useful this website is, if we come in here and we paste our first spell, all right, we can see we're getting errors over here. We can paste our first spell, and then we can come in here. I'm going to take the loud bit out. I don't need it, but I'm going to start changing this template. So let's put in name. Oh, look at that, acid splash. All right, so name, here's the output through the template into there. All right, and then we could put in level. Alright, so as you can see, this is really cool for us to learn how to play and make our handlebar templates. So as an example, we could go name. And then on a new line, we could go, what is it? This is a level. Alright, and it's a level 0. School. Curly bracket, and then we do the name of the data element that we want. Alright, now note this. Alright, it's cap sensitive, guys. You've got to get the words exactly right. Alright, so that worked really nicely. Acid splash 0C. Now, there are some more complex examples here. So let's do cast time. Now, the interesting thing about cast time, or probably the interesting thing about these three that you've seen so far, is that these are sort of like, these are direct objects. Alright, so we have an object called name, and that contains the information acid splash. We have an object called level, that contains 0. But here, we have an object called time that has sub-objects, alright, or nested objects of number and unit. Alright, so every section of time has 2 pieces of information in it. And that's going to be a little bit harder to get out. So what do? Well, we can come in here and go time. Does that work? No, it doesn't. It returns object. Alright, and that's because there's 2 objects in here, so it doesn't know which one to return. So what do? We do a full stop and write number. Did that work? No, but it's close. Now if we come in and do this one, and unit, what happens? Still not working. And I reckon I know why, and then I'm going to go through this in a bit, but it's because of these. Alright, there we go. So we get 1 action. So just a heads up that where you see those square brackets, this method doesn't work, but we can show you a way that does work in a bit. Let's just have a look here though, just to show you the difference here. So if we were to do range, we're going to go curly bracket, we're going to go range dot, what do I want? Type. Alright, see how we get that. Now the difference here, guys, is this square bracket and the square bracket. This one here doesn't have the square bracket. So therefore the method of dot object works. Alright. What do we got? We got type. We got distance. So let's try bring this one in here, because this goes in 3 levels of depth. So we're going range dot distance. Alright, that's returned object, and the reason for that is range has a nested object of distance, which has a nested object of type and amount. So in this case here, I want to do amount, which returns 60, but then I want the feet as well, so I'm going to change that one there to type. Alright, and now we get 60 feet, alright, or 0.60 feet. So in this case here, I would probably get rid of that. Alright, so range 60 feet, I would do probably this. Range, I don't know, what do I want? I want type. Alright, so now it's a range 60 feet point. Alright, so pretty much the curly brackets was bringing in the information. Okay, and as you can see, this is a really useful website for playing around in real time to learn what will happen when you run this through Obsidian. Alright, and just so you understand the process completely, what are we doing here? Like, what are we actually talking about? We're creating a handlebar template. Alright, and here's a much more complex example of something that I've prepared earlier. Alright, this is my template for creating my spells from the 5th edition tools, the JSON data. Alright, it's a bit more complex, as you can see, but it's actually not doing that much, and you'll go through and see it. Alright, but just so you understand the process, how does it work, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to open this here, and I'm just going to bring in, just for the sake of testing, and I do recommend this, I'm going to come down to alter self. What have we got here? I'm just going to grab a section of spells. Alright, I'm going to paste that in here. I'm going to just nest this off. I just want to close that. I'll be looking there. I reckon if we have one more. Just got to make sure I get this right. I reckon. Oh yeah, oh, that's good. So what I'm doing here is I've just copied out a section of the spells, and each section is obviously this section here. All right, just so you understand it. So that is a spell. Then we have a comma. Then we have the next spell. Come down to here. All right, we have a comma. Then we have the next spell. All right, what I'm looking to do is the comma. Is it? No, it's there. This one finishes off here. We don't need a comma, all right, because we're not putting in another one. All right, but we do need to then close off the actual, like the head nesting section. All right, so this section here for the spells needs to be closed off, and that's what we're doing with that, is we're closing that off. Now, I think I might be missing probably one of those. There we go. See how that closed that off? That white line came through. So now we're closing that section off, and then we're closing this section off, which is now a complete file. And the point of this is I'm creating just a very small subset of data, guys. I want something to test with. All right, so I'm going to save this. I'm going to stick it in my downloads. I'm going to call it test import.json. All right. I was going to check that over on my other screen just to make sure that went. Yep, test import.json. Fantastic. All right, now if we go back to Obsidian and let's have a look at what we've done. I've got my handlebar template for spells here already. Okay, so I've made this previously, and we're going to walk through this in a lot of detail, guys. Like, this is going to be a long video, but let's show you the process. All right, so the JSON CSV importer is now installed. We've got the magnifying glass icon over here on the left. We can click that, choose JSON CSV file. So this is where we're going to point it at the document that I just created. All right, so just my subset, the test import. All right, then we're going to choose the template file. All right, so I'm going to come into my Obsidian, come into Test Vault. I'm going to find my handlebar template for spells and run it through there. I'm going to be using the field to use as note name is going to be called name, and you can see that in the background here. Name, so I want every note to be called whatever is in the name information. So in this case, the name of the spell is going to be the name of the note. I don't want a prefix or a suffix. I don't think it's necessary. Where do I want it to go? I'm going to put it in my spells folder. All right, and then we're going to override existing notes. Like, leave that enabled because we're going to do this a lot, guys. Like, you will not get this right most likely on your first go. And now we click import. All right, it's got an error here. All right, but import is finished. And we can come over here to spells and have a look at what's happened. So we've got 4 spells in here. All right, we go through and have a look at the note. We can see it's kind of laid things out. All right, it's bringing in the information. Things look good. All right, look like there's a few things that are missing. But that's all right. That's maybe that information doesn't exist on that part of the note. And if we go into reading mode, what does it look like? Quite nice. Now, my template here is designed to work with the ITS plugin, which I haven't got installed currently. I'll go through and just set that up now, actually, just so you guys can see what it is that I usually look at. We'll go manage, we'll go ITS, and we'll just go use this theme. All right, because when you use the ITS theme, that enables the right-hand sort of wiki-style notes, and as you can see, that's what I'm going for here. All right, so that's what it would look like normally. We can go through and we can have a look. It's got the pictures, it's got the information, it's got a few bits of missing information where like that spell doesn't necessarily have all that information. That's fine, but the outcome here is really quite a satisfying result. All right, and you can see how quick that was. I didn't have to spend any time on that at all. All right, so let's jump in and let's sort of have a look and see what was going on with this, this handlebar template, because it is quite advanced. Well, it is, but it isn't. You'll see. Alright, we'll open up the handlebar template. Got the example JSON file, and we've got the example handlebar template. Alright, here we go. Let's go through this line by line. Alright, have a look over here. So the acid splash, this is a copy of the JSON file, guys. Like, I've put it here just for the purposes of this video. All right, just so we can have a look at what's going on. So name. All right, so name's going to pull into here. All right, that's going to result in acid splash. Level, pretty easy. It's going to bring in 0. All right, casting time. Let's have a look at that. So this gets a little bit more complex. So the casting time, we need each time, but we need the number. All right, so this takes one action, and this is where we were talking before about a nested object. Okay, we need to bring a few of them, and this is the more complex example. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to copy this code over to that handlebar website we were using before. All right, let's just see how that handles that. It doesn't. All right, now the reason why it doesn't in this case specifically is because of the capitalize. The capitalize is not going to work on this website. Capitalize is a helper function that Farling has built into his plugin. All right, so it's there for us to use, but it's not going to work in this website specifically because it doesn't know how it works. So if I get rid of that though, what happens? We get one action. Okay, so remember here before we had these issues with the square brackets being in the code. What we do here is we start an each loop, and anyone knows their coding for each. All right, so every time this happens on each one of these things, I want you to do the following. All right, so each time we're going to loop through time. We want you to return the number and then the units and then end each. All right, so that would go through it. So what you could actually do, I think this will work. All right, see how I can have multiple sections of that in here. All right, so one action, two actions. That's where the square brackets is used in this sort of code, right? It's setting up the fact that it says, hey, there might be more than one copy of the outputted objects for these. All right, so you can have 1 or you can have 10. And by having the each in my code, I'm saying I want you to go through this time section of code every time and return it. So pull out the first one, which is one action. There we go. And then do it again. All right, this time pull out 2 action. Now I'm going to get rid of that because obviously we don't need it in this situation here. All right, but that's a really good example of you to understand how that works. It took me forever to figure that out, and I think it was Farling, so thank you for explaining how that worked for me. But yeah, that's a very handy piece of code. All right, so that's going to come across there, and that's going to basically work out to one action. But the capitalize is a really handy functionality here. So this is a helper that Farling's added in. That will turn the action into capital A action, right? Then we go through. What do we got? We got range. Range is that what we said before. So we're getting the range, which is nested to distance and then amount. So it's going to be 60. Then we're going to capitalize range distance type. So range distance type equals feet. So it's going to equals 60 feet with a capital on the F. All right, area, capitalize range.type, so range type, so it's going to be feet, so it's going to look like that. All right, then we get to a really cool, and this deserves a little bit of an explanation in itself. It's components each. Look at like all the stuff going on in here, like right? That's crazy. Like what the hell is all this? Now let's jump over here and just have a look at some of the examples that I've laid out for you. All right, so these are some of the helpers that are available, and lookup tables is something that Farling has added, and mate, thank you so much for this. I love it. Lookup table basically says we're going to look at our data, and where this result happens, we want to return a different result. All right, and here you can see in the data, all right, so this is the alarm spell. The school is just A, all right. And A tells me, like, I know what that is. That's abjuration, like I know what it should be. But I need to transfer that into something useful. And in order to do that, the lookup table is perfect. So this is a helper. This will not work in this website, okay? It's not supported by this. So don't bother trying to get that working. It's something that Farling has done himself, and Go away, Steam. So he's put that in himself, but it's very, very handy. Basically what we're saying is we want to return the text school, all right? So ignore that, that's just text. And then we're going to start it off with curly bracket, then we're creating a table, okay? So this is the section of code that starts it off that says this is going to be a lookup table. Then we're going to look at the school information, all right? And then where we return C, we want to change C to conjuration. Where we return A, we want to change it to abjuration. Where we return T, transmutation. All right, so you do the return, then the result, then the return, the result, return the result, and you're effectively creating a lookup table as you go. All right, so in this case here, this school A would be changed to school abjuration because we're bringing school in. That's that section there. All right, and then this is returning A from there and turning that into abjuration, so therefore the output is this. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense to you. Play around with it, guys. Like, you know, the thing about this though, because the helpers are in here, the only way to test this, because of the helpers you've got, you can't do it with the website obviously, you've got to run it through the JSON import file, which is why I said to make sure you need that tick on to the override existing files when you create it, because if you get it wrong, you're going to do it again. If you get it wrong, you're going to do it again. And you can do this as many times as you like, guys. Like, ultimately, you just keep doing this and keep playing around with it. You might do one line at a time, import, see what it looks like, and keep going through. All right, so that gets us that information. I think that actually walks you through a few number of those. Let's walk through these situations here in a bit more detail. So these are a bit more of the complex things. So that's how to do a lookup table. All right, that's probably one of the more complex things that I've been through. How to extract nested data from a JSON file. So we have been through this already, but this is just to show you the range distance type, right? So range distance type would bring back, in this case, feet, and I think I've made an error in my setup here. I did that for the action below, so just ignore that. That would be, what are we doing? We're doing capitalized, that would just return feet. I think I actually wrote this down below somewhere actually. It would just return that. Alright, so it'll change the F to capitalization because of the helper. It will then return the result from range distance feet, so range distance type, sorry, will then output to this. Alright, here's a bit more of a complex scenario. So this is the one we showed before. So this is where you've got the square brackets. You need to use the for each time, or the each command. So each time, we return the number, we capitalize the unit, alright, and we return that out. And the output of that would be casting time, 1 action. Capitalize the result, alright, I think you've seen that one already. So in this case here, we're just basically using the capitalize helper. Note the no caps on that, just capitalized, capitalize. Alright, stick it in front with a space after it, the data that you're going to return, and that will turn it into a capitalized result. So in this case here, feet is going to turn into feet. Loop through nested objects. So we've gone through this as well, sort of. Well, actually, no, we haven't gone through. This is a bit more of a more complex situation, similar to what we spoke about before. Well, actually, no, we did go. This is useful. So this is where you're going to see these sort of square brackets used really specifically. You know, in spells, for example, you have more than one class that can cast that spell, but an unknown number of how many types of classes can cast that spell. Right, so with coding, sometimes you might go through and say, well, I expect this thing to happen 4 times, so run this 4 times. We don't need to do that, right? The each is just going to run through it every time that it exists inside of this data. So square bracket, everything exists inside of them. Inside the curly brackets is another section of code that exists under classes from class list. So what are we saying here? Well, we want to output some text that said classes. Then we want to return each classes is the top. There's the nested object from class list. So classes.classList. Yep, we're inside here. And now we want to return each name. All right, yep, we're going to get the name. Then outside of the curly brackets, I've just got a comma. All right, which is basically saying I just want to add some text. Now that's not part of the JSON file. All right, I've added that in myself. I've just put it at the end here. So at the end of each loop, it's going to go through and it's going to create that there. Then we come through and we do a end each, so that closes that off. And the outputting result is this classes sorcerer comment wizard. All right, so that's quite handy. Alright, now looking down, loop through descriptive text. I've put this here just as an example of how I've done this. At the bottom of each spell, there's generally a whole section of text, and if we have a look here, which is kind of like, you know, the description text for how it works. And the thing about it is, you see, it's like it's all in sort of sections. So that there is a section, and that there is a section. And because of that, you can't just run your text once, right? You can't just say, I want to return my, entries once, because if there's multiple paragraphs, you're only going to get the first paragraph. So for that reason, I need to run each entries, and then each, and see this. So what that's basically saying is, because these aren't named, all right, this is sort of like a reference to any text that's in here. So it's going to run each this in entries. So entries, this, and then this. It's going to return back 2 lines of text effectively that says this is what it looks like. And if we have a look in here, what are we doing? I think we're doing acid splash. We got the first paragraph, then we got the second paragraph. Alright, so that's just a really handy way to sort of be able to do that. So each, this, each, then we come through and do it again. Each entry's name entries, and I think in this situation here, there's actually, it gets a bit more complex, right? So here's a good one, alter self. We had a name and then this, all right, and these are sort of the sub parts of the description. So I had to make separate there to handle that. We brought in the name, we brought in the entries, we ended it. And then each higher levels entry, we did that as well. So I've put that text there. You guys can feel free to copy that if you want. It seemed to work for me relatively well. There was certainly some issues with the data. All right, you're not going to get away from that. But obviously, once you render it, it looks quite nice. And then yeah, this just kind of works. So look, JSON is obviously a fair bit more complex, guys. All right. But once you sort of break it down and you understand the idea, like it's not like a CSV file, right, where you might just go type, return each line, or create a note from each line of the text. You do sort of still have your sections of code, but it's all in nested objects sometimes, which is really handy from a data perspective, and really quite useful for you to work with. But obviously you've got to understand how to work that data into the handlebar import. And as you can see, it creates your object thereafter. Now, some of you might be looking at this output and going, oh, but you know, you've got some really ugly stuff in there. How did you clean that up? I'm sure there are smarter people than me who would know how to have their handlebar template smart enough to not put this sort of output here in, all right, or to handle every scenario. And I think like where I've messed up, I think, is I actually need to go back and create tables I think are specifically missing from my spells. I think that's what's going on here. So I haven't handled every situation myself, but usually what I do is I just go back and clean the data afterwards. So in this case here, I would do a search, find, and replace. All right, I would be using something like Sublime text. Okay, and if I bring that over here, I'll probably see the last time I even did this. I would do a file, open folder. All right, we would come into my Obsidian Vault, which is called Test Vault. It's into spells. I'd select that folder, and that would give me a list of everything from here. And then what I would do is do a find in files, and I would start cleaning this data up. So when I come through and have a look at this one, for example, all right, found lots and lots of break lines. All right, I might get rid of that, or where was that? The object. I would probably get rid of this. So I do a search for object. What would I replace it with? I wouldn't replace it with anything. All right, we found 3 occurrences in my data. You're going to have a lot more if you're doing 1,000 spells, but I'd clean it up. All right, then I would save all, and that's then gone. And what I do is I just step through and I just clean it up. So here, for example, where I find that, I know that should be that. So if I do a replace, all right, it just cleans it up. But looks like I actually need to be a bit more careful with that. I need to do that whole section there actually. All right. and now that's a lot more readable, alright, and much easier for us to sort of read. Note that Obsidian was rendering that perfectly fine, so you don't have to go through this level of degree. These were annoying me, so I would go and do a search for that, alright, and I would just replace that with nothing. And then I would come in here and I would find the examples of where that occurs, and I would replace that with, oh, do I want to do it that way? No, I probably want to do this. I probably just messed up there. So I want to do that section there with a space. Alright, replace that with nothing. Alright, and then, oh, I just lost it all. That'll be like, oh, it'll be here, there. Now I've got to find that, replace it with nothing, and off you go. Now also this guys, be very careful with search and find, like make sure you get patterns that, you know, only exist where you need them to exist, because you might break something. And you know, I haven't used those curly braces in my output, alright, so I'm relatively safe to do it. But yeah, then I would, you know, save all. By the time I go back into Obsidian, you should see that my notes have like largely cleaned up. Alright, we don't have those issues there. So that's how I clean the notes up after the fact. And you know, where I've got lots of things happening, I'll use that method to really go through and clean things up. Now, how have I laid my stuff out? So just so you guys are aware, let's look at the Handlebar import. Where was it? We'll go over here. This is the Handlebar template. Alright, and this is the output. Alright, so let's just do a side-by-side comparison. Alright, this is what the template looked like, and you can see all the information here is being pulled into my front matter. Okay, and you can go through line by line there and have a look and see what this really looks like. Alright, so it's quite useful. And as you can see with my spells, what I'm actually doing is I'm storing the majority of the information in the front matter. Alright, but then down here I'm using the data view plugin to actually use the equals this dot metadata. Alright, so in this case here, equals this dot level will pull the data from the metadata down into my note. And what that means is that I don't actually have to go through and replicate that information again in here. Okay, it's all done for me. So I'm basically like just replicating without doing all the things. Now what have I done here? I've got stats. Why did I do that? Equals this dot file name. That's that, the picture. So that's what I'm handling here. This is the picture. So I'm basically bringing I have images in my vault, sorry, that are named like conjuration.png. So this section here is creating a lookup table that's looking at the school. Where it finds C, it replaces it with conjuration. That would therefore point this note at conjuration.png. So if we have a look here, conjuration.png, and then I've just got the text that makes that into a cover small h. That's it. The text in here is literally the template that you would use to make a right-hand wiki style note using the ITS theme. Alright, I've just replaced everything with the equals this. So none of this is really sort of pulling from the JSON file at all. Alright, that's just standard text that I've copied out. Same thing down here. That's got nothing to do with the JSON file, but this is that loop through descriptive text that I walked you through before. So yeah, that gives you a bit of an understanding, I hope, of you know, the complexities involved with working a JSON file. But obviously, once you break it down, it's not really as complex as it looks. You just need to sort of work your way through it. And what I recommend, guys, like go through slowly. Okay, so the way I would do this, where's my example JSON, is sometimes I would literally strip out everything except for one spell, and then I might even just strip out sections of it. All right, and I will, you know, go through. Here's my handlebar template. I might go through like this, right? And my first template would look like that, right? And I'll run that and I'll create it and I'll see what it looks like. and then I'll keep going. All right, I'll add in the next 5 lines and add in the next 3 lines and add in the next 2 lines. Right, I just keep building on that template, and then I'm running it through the import tool, seeing what the output looks like. If I'm happy with it, I move it on to the next line. And generally that's what I do, is I work line by line by line until I get it right. Once I've got it right for one spell, then I will usually load 10 spells into a single JSON file. I'll run that through there, then I'll go through the results of all 10 and have a look and see what that looks like. All right, and the reason why I'm doing that is because not every spell is generally going to be line for line the same. So sometimes I find that I've got it working for one example, but my 5th example might not actually work anymore, and I might need to handle it in a different way. Now, I can't teach you every situation, guys, and I am not a Handlebar or JSON expert in any way, shape, or form. But what do I do when I get stuck? I go to Facebook or I go to the official Discord and I ask for help. All right. The developer of the JSON CSV importer is Farling. He hangs out in Facebook, he hangs out in Discord, and he answers questions. Like, he's fantastic. Like, I've bought him a few coffees at this point. I recommend you do the same. I will send them coffee and then ask them a question, and it usually gets me a response pretty quickly. Yeah, I'm buying a sport. That's what I'm doing. But anyway, that's where you go for help. Facebook and the Discord channels, right? There's plenty of people out there who know how to do this stuff. If you get stuck, you can go into Facebook and say, look, I am trying to deal with this situation in this JSON file. I can't figure out how to do it. Has anyone got any ideas? And usually you have an answer within an hour. All right, so that's my recommendation, is ask the community for help. If you get stuck, don't just sit there bashing your head against this thing, because it can be quite challenging, and your JSON file might have intricacies that, you know, I can't cover. I won't know how to answer maybe, but there might certainly be people out there who can help figure it out. So anyway, that has been how to create a handlebar file from a JSON dataset. Hopefully that is useful for you. It is a rather complex situation, so as I said, just step in lightly, guys. Go one line at a time maybe until you get your feel for it, and just, you know, have a play with this website. I can't recommend it enough as a way for you to sort of go through and learn how to do the basics of Handlebar or the native Handlebar support the first time, because you can do it live. But then also jump over into Farling's plugin README, so you can access that through the Obsidian community plugin section, and read the README, guys. Have a look at what handlebar functions he's put in there. Like, what are the helpers? Because there's things in here that I haven't gone through in this video, and I haven't even used yet, right? So substrings, string arrays, replace regs, string splits, set variables. Like, he's got some really cool functionality in here that he's enabled for us, but you need to go through, read the README, learn how to use it, and then obviously put that into practice inside of your notes, and off you go. And if you haven't figured it out, guys, this is amazingly powerful. Like, if you take the time to learn how to do this, you could import 1,000 spells in 5 to 10 minutes. All right? It's a set and forget. You just go, I've made my handlebar, I've spent, let's say, 4 hours creating my handlebar template. Like, let's say you have trouble with it and it takes you a bit of time. You put the time in, you put the effort in, then you run it over your data set, go and get a coffee, and you come back, you've got like a note for every spell, and it's just like laid out the way you want it, and you are in full control, and it's just wonderful and beautiful thing. I love it. So anyway, that is how to make a handlebar file. Hopefully that's useful. If it is, guys, please do like and subscribe using the buttons below. And outside of that, I want to say a huge, massive thanks to all of my Patreons. If you are looking to get access to my templates, like if you want my handlebar template for spells, that is available to my Patreons. They get access to all of my templates and learning materials. So outside of that, though, my tutorials are all free for anyone to use. So please do not feel like you have to subscribe if you're not in a financial situation to do so. No skin off my back, guys. Reach out, let me know what it is you need help with, and I'll see what I can do. Outside of that, guys, though, I will speak to you on the forums, and have a great day. Thank you.